Captain Veltar pressed her 4 hands against the control panel as her ship shook violently. The gentle current was dying around her, and she could do nothing to save it. Through the cracked viewing window, she could see the enemy ships moving closer like hungry predators. The Krithak had come without warning. One moment, her research team was studying the beautiful rings of Kepler 442c, collecting samples and taking measurements. The next moment, massive black ships appeared from nowhere and began firing on everything that moved. Veltar had seen many things in her 40 years as a Zephyrian space captain, but she had never seen such cruelty. The Krithak did not just attack the research station. They played with it first like a cat playing with a wounded bird. They cut off the escape pods one by one, capturing the scientists inside. She could still hear their screams over the communication channel before it went silent. Her ship had been lucky. The gentle current was faster than the research station, and she had managed to jump to hyperspace just as the Krithak noticed her. But the enemy had damaged her engines before she could escape completely. Now her ship was stuck in normal space, slowly dying as air leaked out through dozens of holes in the hull. "Captain," said her science officer, Morven. His voice was weak, and blue blood was trickling from a cut on his head. "The life support system will fail in 6 hours. Maybe less." Veltar nodded slowly. She had known this already, but hearing it out loud made it real. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, trying to fix what could be fixed. They were all good people, dedicated scientists who had never hurt anyone. They did not deserve to die like this. "What about the emergency beacon?" she asked. "I can get it working," said Morven. "But Captain, who will come?" "The Galactic Council ships are weeks away. The trading routes avoid this sector because of the Krithak. We are alone out here." Veltar looked at her crew. They were all looking at her, waiting for her to make a decision. These people trusted her to keep them alive, but she was not sure she could do it. The Krithak were still out there, probably searching for her ship right now. Even if someone received their distress call, would they be brave enough to face the Krithak? "Send the signal anyway," she said finally. "Send it on all frequencies. Maybe someone will hear us." Morven worked at his console for several minutes. Finally, a soft beeping sound filled the bridge. The distress beacon was active, sending its desperate message into the empty space around them. "The signal is broadcasting," he reported. "Universal distress code along with our location and situation. It will reach about 50 light-years in all directions." 50 light-years. That was a big area. But most of it was empty space or uninhabited systems. The few civilized worlds in range were small colonies or peaceful trading posts. None of them had the military power to challenge a Krithak raiding fleet. Veltar sat back in her captain's chair and tried to think. What did she know about the nearby systems? There was the Centauri trading hub, but they had no warships. The Vegan colonies were too far away. The Procyon system had been abandoned after the plague 5 years ago. Wait, there was one more possibility. Her mind went to the stories she had heard in the trading posts and diplomatic meetings. 3 years ago, a new species had made contact with the galaxy. They called themselves humans, and they came from a world called Earth. The Galactic Council had classified Earth as a Class 12 death world, which meant it was extremely dangerous to most forms of life. Only the toughest species could survive on such planets, and it usually made them very different from the rest of the galaxy. Veltar had never met a human, but she had heard the stories. They were supposed to be impossible to kill, and too stubborn to give up. Some traders said they were dangerous, but others claimed they were surprisingly kind to those who needed help. The stories were so different that she was not sure what to believe. "Captain," said Morven quietly, "I am picking up Krithak patrol ships about 10 million kilometers away. They are moving in our direction." Veltar felt her heart sink. The Krithak had found them. Her damaged ship could not run, and it certainly could not fight. All they could do was wait, and hope that their distress signal would reach someone who cared enough to help. She thought about her crew again. These were good people who had dedicated their lives to learning about the universe. They had families waiting for them back home. Children who would never see their parents again if the Krithak found them first. "How long until the patrol ships reach us?" she asked. "About 4 hours, if they continue on their current course," Morven answered. 4 hours. Maybe that would be enough time for someone to receive their signal and respond. Maybe someone out there would be brave enough to face the Krithak. Veltar closed her eyes and said a prayer to the 7 winds. the ancient spirits her people had worshipped for thousands of years. She prayed for her crew, for their families, and for anyone who might be listening to their desperate call for help. Somewhere in the darkness of space, their signal continued to broadcast. It carried with it the hope of 17 Zephyrian scientists who had done nothing wrong, except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. The signal spread outward at the speed of light, reaching empty systems and inhabited worlds alike. One of those worlds was a small blue planet called Earth, where a species of Deathworlders had recently learned that they were not alone in the universe. The humans had been cautious about making contact with other species, but they had also been curious about their new neighbors. When the Zephyrian distress signal reached Earth's outer monitoring stations, it triggered automatic alarms in military command centers around the planet. Within minutes, the message was decoded and translated. The humans read about the Krithak attack, about the helpless research ship, and about the innocent people who would die unless someone helped them. The response was immediate and decisive. Admiral Sarah Chen was awakened in her quarters aboard the orbital defense station. She read the message once, then read it again. Then she reached for her communicator and began issuing orders that would change the balance of power in this sector of the galaxy forever. The Zephyrians did not know it yet, but help was coming. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars shift and blur as her fleet traveled through hyperspace. Around her, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing for the battle that was waiting for them at the end of their journey. Chen was 55 years old and had been fighting wars for most of her adult life. She had commanded ships in the border wars where humans had fought against themselves over colonies and resources. She had seen friends die and had sent young officers to their deaths. But this mission was different. This time, they were not fighting for territory or politics. They were fighting to save innocent people from monsters. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Commander Torres from his position at the tactical station, "we will reach the target system in 30 minutes. All ships report ready for combat." Chen nodded. Her fleet was not the largest that Earth had ever sent into space, but it was one of the most powerful. 3 battle groups, 18 ships total, including 6 heavy cruisers and her own dreadnought. The crews were all volunteers, veterans who had jumped at the chance to face the Krithak. The Krithak were well known throughout this part of the galaxy, though few species talked about them openly. They were raiders and slavers who attacked weak targets and avoided anyone who could fight back effectively. They were physically intimidating, standing 3 meters tall with natural armor and claws like knives. Their ships were built to look scary, covered in spikes and painted in dark colors. But Chen had faced scary enemies before. During the border wars, she had fought against human pirates who were just as cruel as any alien raider. The difference was that humans learned from their fights. They adapted and improved and found ways to win against impossible odds. It was what they had always done, from the first time they picked up sticks to fight wild animals on ancient Earth. "Ma'am," said Torres, "we are receiving updated intelligence from the monitoring drones we sent ahead. The Krithak have 47 ships in the target system. Most are cruiser class, but there are at least 6 dreadnoughts. They have established a defensive perimeter around the 4th planet. 47 ships against 18. The numbers were not good, but Chen had fought worse odds before. During the Battle of New Singapore, her small task force had defeated a pirate fleet twice their size by using superior tactics and the element of surprise. "What about the Zephyrian ship?" she asked. "Still alive, ma'am?" "Badly damaged but intact. The Krithak have surrounded it with 3 cruisers. They appear to be preparing to board it." Chen felt anger burning in her chest, but she kept her voice calm and professional. "Estimated time until they complete boarding operations?" "Unknown, ma'am. Could be minutes or hours depending on what they are looking for." Chen turned to face her communications officer. "Signal all ships. Prepare for immediate combat upon arrival. Rules of engagement are weapons free. No prisoners unless they surrender unconditionally." The young officer looked surprised. "Ma'am, the Galactic Council protocols require us to attempt diplomatic contact before engaging in hostilities." Chen looked at him with the expression that had made enemy commanders surrender without firing a shot. "Lieutenant, the Krithak attacked a peaceful research vessel and murdered innocent scientists. They are in the process of capturing more innocents for the slave markets. Do you really think they are interested in diplomacy?" "No, ma'am." "Then send the message. All ships, battle formation Sierra 7. We go in fast and hard. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace like thunder in the void. One moment the Krithak were lazily patrolling their prize, confident that no one would dare challenge them. The next moment, 18 human warships appeared on their sensors, already locking weapons and accelerating toward them. Chen opened a communication channel to the Krithak fleet commander. She had studied their language and culture during the journey, preparing for this moment. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the void. "You have exactly 60 seconds to release your prisoners and withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." The response came quickly, spoken in heavily accented Galactic Standard by someone who clearly thought very highly of himself. "Foolish Deathworlders. You are outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and we may allow some of you to live as slaves." Chen almost smiled. The Krithak commander was doing exactly what she had expected. He was trying to intimidate her with threats and superior numbers. It was probably what had worked for him in dozens of previous encounters with other species. But humans were not like other species. They had evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill them. From the smallest virus to the largest predator, they had learned to fight back against impossible odds, to find ways to win when winning should have been impossible. "Counteroffer," Chen said calmly, and cut the communication channel. She turned to her weapons officer. "All batteries target their flagship. Fire when ready." The first human salvo lit up the darkness like a newborn star. The Retribution's main gun sent streams of accelerated particles across space at a significant fraction of light speed. The Krithak flagship's shields flared and failed under the concentrated fire, and explosions began blossoming across its hull. Around the battlefield, the other human ships opened fire as well. The Krithak had been expecting the usual pattern of galactic warfare, where fleets maneuvered carefully and traded shots at long range while trying to minimize casualties. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that charged straight into the teeth of their formation, accepting heavy damage in order to get close enough to use their most powerful weapons. "Ma'am," reported Torres, "the Krithak are trying to reorganize their formation. Several of their ships are moving to intercept our destroyer screen." "Let them come," Chen replied. "Signal Captain Rodriguez. Tell her to take the Vengeance and extract those Zephyrians while we keep the main fleet busy." The battle was unlike anything the Krithak had ever experienced. They were used to fighting species that valued their ships and crew members above all else, who would retreat rather than take serious losses. Humans fought differently. When their shields failed, they kept fighting. When their armor was breached, they kept fighting. When their weapons were damaged, they found new ways to hurt their enemies. Captain Webb of the destroyer Defiant proved this point when his ship took a direct hit that knocked out his missile systems. Instead of retreating, he ordered his crew to ram the nearest Krithak cruiser. The collision destroyed both ships, but it also opened a gap in the enemy formation that 3 other human ships exploited immediately. Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. The Krithak were good fighters, but they had made a fundamental mistake. They had assumed that because humans were a young species, they would be easy to defeat. They had not considered that humans had spent their entire evolutionary history fighting against things that were bigger, stronger, and more dangerous than they were. The Krithak were about to learn why Earth was classified as a death world, and why its children had not come to the stars as prey. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, and the Krithak were beginning to understand that they had made a terrible mistake. These humans did not fight like any species they had encountered before. Where other enemies retreated when damaged, humans pressed their attacks. Where others tried to preserve their ships, humans used them as weapons when necessary. Captain Marcus Webb guided his destroyer Defiant through a storm of enemy fire, his ship's hull glowing red-hot from repeated hits. His first officer was dead, killed when a Krithak plasma beam punched through the bridge armor. His weapons officer was badly wounded but still at her post, blood running down her face as she targeted enemy ships. "Captain," she called out over the noise of alarms and explosions. "Forward missile tubes are gone. We have maybe 10 minutes of railgun ammunition left." Webb looked at the tactical display. A Krithak heavy cruiser was bearing down on them, its weapons charging for what would probably be a killing blow. A rational captain would have ordered his ship to retreat, to preserve what was left of his crew and vessel. But Webb had not survived 3 years of the border wars by being rational. He had survived by being stubborn, by refusing to give up even when the situation looked hopeless. It was a very human trait and one that the Krathak were learning to fear. All power to engines, he ordered. Set course directly for that heavy cruiser, and tell engineering to prepare for ramming speed. His remaining bridge crew looked at him for a moment, then began carrying out his orders without question. They were humans, too, and they understood what needed to be done. The Defiant accelerated toward the enemy ship like a missile, her engines pushed far beyond safe parameters. The Krathak cruiser tried to change course, but it was too late. Webb's ship struck it amidships at tremendous speed, the collision tearing both vessels apart in a brilliant explosion that could be seen across the battlefield. Similar scenes were playing out throughout the combat zone. The UES Normandy had lost most of her weapons early in the battle, but her captain found a new use for his ship when he rammed a Krathak destroyer that was threatening a damaged human cruiser. The UES Thermopylae continued firing even after her bridge was blown open to space, her captain giving orders through a helmet communicator until his ship's reactor finally overloaded. Admiral, Chen watched these acts of heroism from the bridge of the Retribution and felt a familiar mixture of pride and sorrow. Pride because her people were showing the galaxy what humans were capable of. Sorrow because she knew that many of these brave officers and crew members would not be going home. "Ma'am," reported Torres, "Captain Rodriguez has reached the Zephyrian ship. She is beginning rescue operations now." Chen nodded. The rescue of the Zephyrian civilians was the primary objective of this mission, but she had a secondary goal as well. The Krathak had been terrorizing this sector for generations, attacking peaceful ships and enslaving innocent people. It was time someone taught them that there were consequences for such actions. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Phase 2 begins now. No Krathak vessel leaves this system." The human fleet began to reorganize itself around the remaining enemy ships. The Krathak had started the battle with 47 vessels, but fewer than 20 were still capable of fighting. Their formation was broken, their flagship was drifting powerless, and their crews were beginning to panic. Captain Elena Rodriguez maneuvered her heavy cruiser Vengeance alongside the damaged Zephyrian research ship. Her marine boarding teams were already in their powered armor, ready to cross the space between the two vessels. The Krathak had surrounded the Gentle Current with 3 cruisers, but 2 of them were now engaged with other human ships, and the third was trying to retreat. "Marines away," reported her tactical officer. "Boarding successful. They have reached the Zephyrian ship." Rodriguez watched through her ship's external cameras as her Marines crossed between the vessels. They moved with the confidence of people who had trained for this exact situation hundreds of times. The Krathak had been preparing to board the Zephyrian ship themselves, but they had not expected to face human Marines. The difference was immediately obvious. Krathak warriors were individually powerful, with their natural armor and claws, but they were not used to fighting enemies who could match their ferocity. Human Marines had no natural armor, but they had technology and tactics that more than made up for it. Their powered suits multiplied their strength and speed, while their weapons could punch through Krathak armor like paper. More importantly, the Marines had something the Krathak did not understand. They were fighting to protect innocent people, not for glory or profit. It made them dangerous in ways that the raiders could not comprehend. Within minutes, the surviving Zephyrian crew was aboard human ships and being treated by human doctors. Captain Veltar found herself in the medical bay of the Vengeance, staring in amazement at the humans who had saved her and her people. She had expected the humans to be large and intimidating, like the Krathak. Instead, they were smaller than she was, with soft skin and no natural weapons. But their eyes held something she had never seen before, a kind of controlled intensity that spoke of inner strength and determination. "Captain Veltar," said a human doctor as she worked on the Zephyrian's injuries, "you are safe now. We will take you and your crew to safety." "Thank you," Veltar managed to say in her broken galactic standard. "But the Krathak, they are still out there. They will follow us." The human doctor smiled, and Veltar was surprised to see kindness in that expression. "No, they won't. Admiral Chen is making sure of that." Back on the main battlefield, the final phase of the battle was beginning. The remaining Krathak ships had formed into a desperate defensive formation, trying to protect themselves while they looked for a way to escape. But the human fleet had them surrounded, cutting off all escape routes with mathematical precision. Fleet Commander Gorth Ak stared at his tactical display from the bridge of his crippled flagship. He had commanded Krathak raiders for over 50 years, had conquered dozens of systems and enslaved thousands of beings. Never in all that time had he faced an enemy like this. The humans fought without fear, pressing attacks that should have been suicidal. Their ships were smaller than his, but they used them with deadly effectiveness. Worst of all, they seemed to get stronger as the battle went on, as if desperation and impossible odds only made them more dangerous. "Commander," said his communications officer, "the human admiral is hailing us again." Gorthak straightened in his command chair. He was Krithak, a warrior of the greatest raiding empire in the galaxy. He would not show weakness to these soft-skinned mammals, even if they were defeating his fleet. "Put her through," he ordered. Admiral Chen's face appeared on his screen, and Gorthak was surprised to see that she looked tired but not angry. There was something cold and calculating in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. "Fleet Commander Gorthak," she said, making his name sound like a curse. "This is your final chance. Surrender unconditionally and face trial for your crimes, or continue fighting and be destroyed." Gorthak's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his people. "You think you have won, human? We are Krithak. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. But you have never fought humans before," Chen replied calmly. "Tell me, Commander, in all your raids and conquests, have you ever faced a species that gets stronger the more desperate they become? Have you ever fought an enemy that views impossible odds as a personal challenge?" Gorthak remained silent because he knew she was right. The Krithak had built their empire by attacking the weak and avoiding the strong. They had never encountered a species that seemed to thrive on adversity. "We are Krithak," he said finally. "We do not surrender." Chen nodded as if she had expected that answer. "Then you will die as Krithak. All ships finish this." The final assault was swift and merciless. The human fleet moved in perfect coordination, their weapons targeting critical systems on each Krithak vessel. There was no glory in it, no dramatic speeches or heroic gestures. It was simply the methodical destruction of an enemy that had chosen death over surrender. When the last Krithak ship exploded in a brief flash of light, an eerie silence settled over the battlefield. The battlefield was quiet now, filled only with the twisted remains of what had once been a mighty Krithak raiding fleet. 47 ships had entered this system with confidence and cruelty. None would be leaving. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the rescue shuttles move through the debris field. Her crews were searching for survivors, though they all knew they would find none among the Krithak. The raiders had chosen to fight to the death rather than surrender, and the humans had honored that choice. "Casualty report," she said quietly to Lieutenant Commander Torres. Torres consulted his display, his face grim. 6 ships lost, ma'am. 3 destroyers, 2 cruisers, and the frigate Dauntless. Total casualties are 437 dead, 216 wounded. The wounded are being transferred to our hospital ships. Chen nodded slowly. 437 of her people would not be going home. They had died to save 17 Zephyrian civilians they had never met, in a system millions of light years from Earth. Some people might say it was not worth it, that the cost was too high. Chen disagreed. Those 437 had died protecting innocents from monsters. They had died ensuring that the Krithak would never again attack peaceful researchers or enslave helpless civilians. Their sacrifice had meaning. "Ma'am," said Torres, "we are receiving a priority message from Earth Command." Chen was not surprised. News of the battle would have reached Earth by now, transmitted by the automated communication drones that followed every human fleet. The politicians and admirals back home would want to know why she had engaged in combat without authorization, why she had destroyed an entire enemy fleet without attempting negotiations. "Put it through to my ready room," she said. "And Torres? Make sure our guests are comfortable. The Zephyrians have been through enough." Chen walked to her private office behind the bridge, where she could speak freely without her crew overhearing. The message was from Admiral Harrison, her superior and old friend from the border wars. Harrison's face appeared on the screen, and Chen could see the worry in his eyes. "Sarah, what the hell happened out there?" "The preliminary reports say you destroyed 47 Krithak ships without offering terms for surrender." "I offered terms," Chen replied calmly. "They refused twice. The Galactic Council is already calling for an investigation. They say you used excessive force against a sovereign fleet." Chen felt anger building in her chest, but she kept her voice level. "Jim, those sovereign raiders had just attacked a peaceful research vessel. They murdered innocent scientists and were preparing to sell the survivors into slavery. What exactly would have been an appropriate level of force? Harrison sighed. I know, Sarah, I know. But the Council has protocols for these situations. You were supposed to attempt diplomatic resolution before engaging. Diplomatic resolution? Chen's voice grew colder. Jim, have you read the reports from this sector? The Krethek have been raiding peaceful ships for decades. They have enslaved thousands of beings and destroyed entire colonies. How exactly do you negotiate with people like that? The Council says every species has the right to due process under galactic law. Chen stared at the screen for a moment before responding. The Council is 3 weeks away by hyperspace. By the time they could have responded, the Zephyrians would have been dead or in slave markets on the other side of the galaxy. Sometimes, Jim, due process is a luxury that innocent people cannot afford. She paused, then continued in a quieter voice. I lost 437 people today. Good people who volunteered to risk their lives for strangers. Do you think I made that decision lightly? Harrison looked tired. No, Sarah, I know you didn't, but there are going to be consequences. The Council is already talking about sanctions against Earth. Let them talk, Chen replied. And while they are talking, maybe they can explain why they never did anything about the Krethak in all these years. Maybe they can explain why it took humans to finally stop these raiders. After the call ended, Chen sat alone in her office for several minutes, thinking about what had happened and what would come next. The Galactic Council would probably condemn her actions, might even demand her arrest. The politicians on Earth would worry about diplomatic consequences and trade agreements. But Chen knew that word of this battle would spread throughout the galaxy. And that word would carry a message that had been needed for a long time. Predators and raiders would learn that there was now a species willing to fight them, no matter the odds or cost. A soft chime indicated someone was at her door. Come in, she called. Captain Veltar entered, still wearing the medical gown the human doctors had given her. The Zephyrian looked fragile after her ordeal, but her eyes held a strength that Chen recognized. Admiral, Veltar said in carefully pronounced galactic standard. I wanted to thank you. You and your people saved us when no one else would. Chen gestured to the chair across from her desk. Please sit. How are you feeling? Veltar settled into the chair, her forearms folding gracefully. Better thanks to your medical team. But I am confused about something. Why did you come? Why did humans risk so much for people you had never met? It was a good question, and one that Chen had been asking herself since this mission began. Because it was the right thing to do, she said finally. Because innocent people were in danger, and we had the power to help them. But the cost... Veltar's voice trailed off as she thought about the human ships that had been destroyed. The cost was high, Chen agreed, but the cost of doing nothing would have been higher. If we had ignored your distress call, you and your crew would be dead or enslaved. More importantly, the Krethak would have continued attacking other peaceful ships. Sometimes stopping evil requires sacrifice. Veltar was quiet for a moment. My people have always been peaceful. We avoid conflict whenever possible. But today I learned that sometimes peace is only possible when good people are willing to fight for it. Chen nodded. That is a hard lesson, but an important one. The galaxy has many predators who respect only strength. Ignoring them does not make them go away. What will happen now? Veltar asked. To you, I mean. I heard your communication officer mention investigations and sanctions. Chen shrugged. Politicians will do what politicians do. They will hold hearings and write reports and make speeches. But the important thing has already happened. The Krethak will not be raiding this sector anymore, and other species will know that humans are willing to defend innocent people. After Veltar left, Chen returned to the bridge to oversee the recovery operations. Her ships were collecting the bodies of their fallen comrades and preparing them for the journey home. It was always the hardest part of any battle, but it was also the most important. These people had given their lives for something they believed in, and they deserved to be remembered with honor. Ma'am, said Torres, we are receiving multiple communications from civilian ships throughout the sector. They want to thank us for stopping the Krethak. Chen was not surprised. The Krethak had terrorized this region for generations, attacking any ship they thought was weak enough to overwhelm. Merchants, researchers, colonists, refugees, all had lived in fear of encountering the black ships with their predatory crews. Any word from other military forces? She asked. Yes, ma'am. The Altarian Defense Force is requesting permission to rendezvous with us. They want to coordinate future anti-piracy operations. The Vegan Colonial Navy has made a similar request. Chen smiled for the first time since the battle began. This was what she had hoped for. Other species were finally willing to stand up to the raiders and slavers who had plagued this region for so long. The humans had shown that the Krarthak could be defeated, and now others were ready to help finish the job. The Retribution and her surviving ships began the long journey home, carrying the bodies of heroes and the living proof that sometimes the only way to stop a monster is to hit it harder than it expects. Behind them, they left a message that would echo throughout the galaxy. Humanity had come to the stars not as conquerors, but as protectors, and anyone who threatened innocence in their presence would face the consequences. 3 weeks after the battle, Captain Veltar stood in the observation deck of Earth's orbital station, looking down at the blue and white planet that had produced such remarkable people. The sight was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. From space, Earth looked peaceful, but she now knew that this world had forged its children in fire and struggle. Admiral Chen joined her at the viewing window, offering a cup of the bitter drink humans called coffee. Veltar had developed a taste for the diluted version the doctors had prepared for her Zephyrian physiology. "The memorial service for your crew was beautiful," Chen said quietly. "I have never seen Zephyrian funeral rites before." "Thank you, Admiral. Your people have shown tremendous kindness to us." Veltar paused, choosing her words carefully. "I must admit, when we first heard that humans were classified as Deathworlders, my species was frightened." Chen chuckled, a sound without much humor. "Most species are when they first learn about Earth. A world where everything is trying to kill you tends to produce a certain type of people." "Yes, but we have learned something important. Deathworlders are dangerous, but only to those who would harm the innocent." Chen looked out at her home planet. "The galaxy needed to understand something, Captain. Humanity did not come out here looking for a fight. We came seeking knowledge, trade, friendship, but we brought our warships because we learned long ago that the universe contains species who only understand one language." "What language is that?" "Force applied quickly and without mercy to those who prey on the weak." Chen's voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing the weather. "The Krarthak Empire terrorized this sector for generations. Word of what happened here has already spread to dozens of systems." Veltar nodded. She had seen the reports coming in from across the sector. Trading posts that had been abandoned due to Krarthak raids were reopening. Merchant ships were returning to routes they had avoided for years. Research vessels like her own were planning expeditions to systems that had been too dangerous to visit. "Some species are calling you monsters for showing no mercy," she said. Chen turned from the window. "And what would you say to those critics, Captain?" "I would say they have never watched their friends die while raiders laugh and take prisoners for slave markets." Veltar's voice grew stronger as she spoke. "I would say they have never had to send a desperate distress call into empty space, hoping anyone would care enough to help." She paused, remembering that terrible day when the Krarthak had destroyed her research station. "The Zephyrians were conducting peaceful scientific research. We had no weapons, no military escorts. The Krarthak attacked us for sport and profit. What mercy did they show my colleagues?" Chen nodded. "Exactly. The galaxy spent so long worrying about what humans might do that they forgot to consider what we would do when faced with genuine evil." Reports from across the sector supported Chen's words. The complete destruction of a major Krarthak fleet had sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. Pirate gangs that had operated freely for decades suddenly found themselves looking over their shoulders, wondering when human ships might appear on their sensors. The Syndicate of Rax, a network of slavers operating near the Galactic Rim, had quietly abandoned 3 star systems after intercepting communications about the battle. The Bloodclaw pirates, who had raided shipping lanes for over a century, had retreated to the lawless zones beyond the galactic barrier. But the most significant change was in how other species viewed humanity. Before the battle, humans had been seen as newcomers to the galactic community. Interesting, but not particularly important. Now they were being courted as potential allies by species across the local arm of the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez tells me that 17 different species have applied for mutual defense treaties with Earth, Chen said. The Altarian Defense Force wants to establish joint patrol routes. The Vegan colonies are offering to host human naval bases. Veltar was not surprised. She had seen how efficiently the human fleet had operated, how their crews had worked together under impossible circumstances. Any species facing threats from raiders or slavers would want such allies. "What about the Galactic Council?" she asked. Chen's expression grew cold. The Council formally censured humanity for excessive use of force and failure to attempt diplomatic resolution. They demanded that I be handed over for trial on charges of committing acts of war against a sovereign fleet. "That is ridiculous," Veltar said angrily. "The Krathak were murderers and slavers. The Council seems to believe that every species has the right to due process, even when they are in the middle of committing genocide." Chen shook her head. Fortunately, the censure was quietly dropped when those 17 species applied for defense treaties. Hard to maintain that humans are dangerous aggressors when half the sector is asking for our protection. The political aftermath had been swift and decisive. The Galactic Council found itself in the uncomfortable position of condemning the only species willing to actually fight the pirates and raiders that plagued civilized space. When multiple member species announced their intention to withdraw from the Council, unless the censure was dropped, the politicians quickly changed their tune. More importantly, the battle had established a new precedent in galactic law. The principle of humanitarian intervention was quietly added to the Council's charter, allowing member species to use force to protect innocent civilians from raiders and slavers. It was a victory that would save countless lives in the years to come. "Admiral," Veltar said carefully, "there is something I need to tell you. My government has decided to relocate our research operations to this sector, under the protection of the human fleet. We want to work with your scientists to learn from each other." Chen smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. "That would be wonderful. Earth has much to learn from Zephyrian research techniques, and we have much to learn from human courage," Veltar replied. The conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Commander Torres, who approached them with a data tablet. "Admiral, you need to see this. It's a message from the frontier colonies near the Scorpius Arm." Chen read the message, her expression growing serious. "Another distress call. A colony ship carrying refugees from the Helix War. They are under attack by something called the Devourer Swarm." Veltar felt her heart sink. More innocents in danger, more predators taking advantage of the weak. "Will you respond?" Chen looked out at Earth one more time, then turned to Torres. "Signal the fleet. All available ships are to prepare for immediate departure. And send a message to Admiral Harrison. Tell him we have another humanitarian crisis that requires intervention." As Torres hurried away to carry out her orders, Chen turned back to Veltar. "This is what humans do, Captain. We go where we are needed, and we fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." Within hours, another human fleet was departing Earth's orbital shipyards, heading for a distant system where innocent people were calling for help. The ships were crewed by volunteers, men and women who had heard the distress call and decided that someone needed to answer it. Word of the new mission spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. Species that had never heard of humans began to learn their name. Pirates and raiders who had dismissed Earth as a minor threat started to reconsider their operations. The message was clear. Humanity had come to the stars not as conquerors, but as guardians. They would trade with those who came in peace, learn from those who shared knowledge, and defend those who could not defend themselves. But for those who preyed on the innocent, who enslaved the weak and murdered the helpless, humanity had a different message. It was written in the wreckage of the Krathak fleet, in the empty space where 47 ships had once sailed. It was a message that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The Deathworlders had arrived, and they were not afraid to fight. In the years that followed, the phrase "the human response" became known throughout civilized space. When pirates attacked a merchant convoy, someone would send a message to Earth. When slavers raided a peaceful colony, the call would go out to the human fleet. When monsters threatened the innocent, humanity would respond, always in kind, always with overwhelming force, always without mercy for the merciless. The galaxy learned that there were consequences for evil, and that those consequences came from a small blue world where evolution had forged protectors from predators, where the strong defended the weak, and where a species had decided that some things were worth fighting for. The SOS had been sent by desperate victims. The response had come from Earth's children, and they had answered in the only language that monsters understand.